Hi everyone, welcome back to another academic video. This one is a requested video and it's all about how to tackle lecturing a large audience. If you're new, my name is Caroline. I'm a university physics lecturer. If you are a regular coming along to this channel, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. I do enjoy reading all of your comments, and this video actually came up in the comment requests. And it was, as an academic, how do I tackle when I have to give a lecture to say 100+ students? And that's a really great topic for a video. So thank you very much for the person who suggested it. When I consider how I lecture a large audience, I think I do things slightly differently depending on whether I'm giving a lecture to a large crowd, so 100+ people or a large number of students, whether I'm giving a conference talk to a large audience, or whether actually I'm doing some kind of public engagement or outreach talk to a large audience. So in this video, I'm going to focus on how I tackle lecturing a large number of students. If you're interested in how I deal with and my tips for conference talks or public engagement talks to large audiences, let me know in the comments and I can definitely make a future video. But in today's one, let's talk about how we, as academics, can make sure that we're doing the very best. We've got over 100 students in our lecture theatre. So these are just my personal tactics. I'd love to know your top tips. How do you come to lecture theatre equipped when you need to give your lecture to a large number of students? But these are my kind of, I guess, personal hints, tricks and tips I picked up with how I deal with the situation. So first up is authority of the room. That sounds very kind of power grabbing and controlling. And I don't mean that. It's just when you walk into that lecture theatre for the first time and you have a large number of students, you've really got to kind of capture the room's attention quite quickly in order to be able to, I guess, have the authority and the control over the content and the direction and the tone and the atmosphere within your lectures. So I'll give a practical example. By that I mean I walk into a lecture theatre and, you know, sometimes people are chatting and it can be quite noisy and you've got to get the attention to start the lecture. Now, sometimes people will go quiet and will be very, waiting for the lecture to start. Sometimes people will keep talking until you as a lecturer make some kind of indication that we're about to start the lecture. The very first lecture I had to give, actually, when I joined university, I'd pretty much lost my voice the night before. And I thought, gosh, how am I going to get everybody's attention in this lecture theatre? And very, very fortunately for me, there was a piano in the room and I am a pianist. So actually I started playing the piano, which was probably a bit strange and odd for the students, but it got their attention and it meant that I could then start the lecture. So you need some kind of way of capturing and getting the room to be focused on you. And actually, I think quite importantly, at least for those initial few lectures as well, you need the whole room to really be quite respectful and kind of respectful of other people's learning. I guess by what I mean by that is sometimes, you get people that quietly want to keep chattering or talking just as you start the lecture. And at least for those first few weeks, I kind of try to stop that from happening. So if I can hear lots of murmurings going on at the back, I'll just very politely say, oh, have we got an issue? Or are people just getting ready or settling down still? As a nice, polite reminder that actually we now are in a lecture format. There are a lot of students in the room with us, and we do need to be quiet at certain times of the lecture so that other students are able to hear and engage with the material. So yes, it's not like some kind of power trip or anything like that, but I do think, especially with a large audience, it's really important that as a lecturer straight away, you gain authority of the room. Even if you're feeling nervous, it's kind of portraying an outward confidence, I think is really important. interestingly, I don't always then stay at the front of the lecture theatre. Now, I think most academics, many of us, we will almost be conditioned to stay at the front of our lecture theatres and to stay near the computer, stay near the whiteboard, stay near whatever resources we have and lecture to the students from the front of the room. And it's been tricky for the last few years because the pandemic, we've had very controlled environments where we can stand. I've had to stand in taped out boxes. I've had to stand behind certain screens. It's really restricted your movement as the lecturer within the lecturing environment. However, before the pandemic, and I think we're starting to approach a little bit more of this kind of situation again now, I would move around. So I would often wear a microphone to give my lecture. Often our lectures are recorded, and for that I need to wear a mic to my clothing. Often I will have a clicky pointer so I can actually progress the slides that I'm using from anywhere in the lecture theatre. Yes, if I'm giving a derivation or doing something where I'm handwriting, I will need to be locked to that kind of visualizer or whatever display screen you're using at the front of the room. But actually, if I'm just explaining a concept or an idea, I don't have to stay at the front of the classroom. So as long as I'm now within these kind of COVID and this post-pandemic regulations, I can move around. And I've done this in the past, so when I've had a large number of students in the lecture theatre and I want to make sure that the students at the back of the lecture theatre are also able to engage and kind of come with me with the material, is I will move and sometimes give the lecture from standing at the back. Which I suspect, again, is quite disconcerting for some of the students who want to sneak in and sit in the back row, have their sweets and snacks, and maybe be on their phones at the same time or kind of multitasking whilst they're listening to the lecture. They probably don't like the lecturer coming up and standing near their end of the lecture theatre. I don't do it often, I don't do it every single lecture, but every now and then I will make a point of moving around the lecture theatre when I can within the content of what I'm delivering, just to try to make sure that all the students within my lecture theatre are being included and that I'm not always standing in the same space. It just changes the rhythm, changes the pattern slightly of the lecture. And again, it also kind of keeps people's attention because you're doing something slightly different. Talking of doing things differently, if you've got a large number of students in a lecture theatre, I do try tactics to make it an interactive experience. So quite often I'll use smartphones or tablets or Wi-Fi's kind of connected devices so that we can do some kind of interactive voting. So I'll put a quiz question up, or I'll put something up they need to kind of work out and give me a multiple choice answer. And I'll ask for them to send me their answer electronically using their particular piece of IT that they might have brought to them with a lecture theatre. Quite often it's their mobile phone. And then in real time, I can display the answers that are coming in from them as a collective audience. And that's actually quite nice because it gives a feeling that the audience is sort of working together. The students are then able to see that other people may be thinking differently to how they're thinking. And sometimes it can open up really good, fun lines of inquiry and discussion. If you can see that the lecture theatre is maybe locking onto one answer and you're on a different page and you actually know the answer is something slightly different, it can make for a really good discussion point in your lecture. And I also do challenges in my lectures. They seem to work quite well even with a large number of students. Sometimes I'll bring in a small prize, nothing major, nothing huge. It could just be a cake or something, and there'll be a challenge question to work out. And then people will work it out, and then actually I sometimes invite the person who's got the answer right to come to the front to share their answer with the class. And again, some people obviously will not want to do that, and that's absolutely fine. Not everybody wants to be in that situation, but sometimes for students they really like that. They like the chance to experience what it's like to be the academic lecturing to their peer group, if you like. And again, it can make quite a jovial and a fun environment. Another thing that I found with large audiences, and it's true with the small audiences and definitely with large audiences, is that I need to establish and clearly articulate when there are going to be breaks. quite often my lectures are allocated in 2-hour chunks. And that's a long time to be studying physics. And I don't know what you have at your universities. You know, are you limited to like a 50-minute lecture? Do you have super long lectures? But I think it can really help an audience not become restless if they know that a break is going to be coming up in the next few 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Because when you've got over 100 people in the room, you know, if that restlessness starts to shift and creep in, you do kind of sense it. So I'm very open and upfront. Right at the start of each of my lecture, I'll show a bit of a map for that lecture and where we're going. And I will say where the break points are. You know, chance for people to maybe not stretch their legs, but actually get their phones out, or maybe, you know, have a chat with their neighbours. Sometimes there's time to nip out quickly and grab a coffee, nip to the bathroom. I think it's just nice if you know that a break is coming. And when I'm sitting in an audience for a long period of time and I'm listening to content delivered to me, I really appreciate knowing when a break is coming up. And I think if you know that, it can help your large audience not be as restless. So yeah, they are just, I guess, a few of the tips, well, not tips, they're just a few of the things I would do to try to ensure that a large lecture theatre, so a large number of students, are remaining as engaged as I possibly can get them to be with the course material and what I'm teaching. And it will depend subject to subject how you tackle this. You know, some subjects lend themselves to kind of small group activities or multiple choice kind of quizzes. Sometimes you just got to do a long derivation. Sometimes you might be able to split the room and have one side of the room working on one thing, the other side of the room working on another thing. Quite often with over 100 students, it is going to be me as the academic delivering content with them kind of listening and receiving it. But I try to break that pattern as much as possible to make it different and enjoyable for the student. But let me know in the comments, you know, what are your top tactics for dealing with large lectures where you've got many students and you're having to deliver content to a high number of students? As I said, I do things slightly differently if I'm delivering content to a large number of people in a kind of a public engagement capacity, and I have different tactics if I'm doing it at a conference. But we can save those for a future video. So leave me a comment. I do love reading your comments. As always, if you're new to the channel, maybe hit subscribe. It's a free channel. It's nice to have this academic space here on YouTube. But as always, please do continue to look after yourselves. If you're in semester now, in term time, I hope things are going well, and I will see you next Monday. Bye.